Turn everything on. What happened?
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn. Glenn Hurst. He now watches from home, so he doesn't have to come. He doesn't have to drive all the way over here. Since he does drive to come up here 2 days a week, and manages our Tuesday, Thursday morning shift. But fourth vice chair is going to be youth outreach. Fancy enough, that is Dylan Peters, who was actually our first intern with the party, I think about 3.5 years ago or so. And Dylan is Nikki's son, but Dylan just graduated from Wofford. He's taking an off year. And we said, well, if you take an off year, why don't you do this? So he's going to be very active on that. What we're going to try to do, or what we would like to do, obviously it's youth and outreach, but we want to do more on the young Republican side. And what we're probably going to do is set up a Greenville County Republican Party Young Republicans and let Dylan run that to get it started, and then go out there and see how we can kind of build that out there. So there is a young, a young Republicans group, throughout the state and nationally. It won't be part of that, but it'll be our auxiliary group from the Greenville County Republican Party. And fifth vice chair is obviously Terry Wicker. Maybe Terry's watching too, but Terry has been our fifth vice chair for, I guess, 3.5 years or so. She plans all of our events. So she's, I conned her and everybody else into continuing in their roles to do that. Secretary position will be contested between Scott Gear and Angie Fisher. So we can talk more about that here or at some later date, or there'll be some more emails coming out about that. And then the treasurer position will be Mary Wheeler. Mary's been our treasurer for at least 2 years, if not maybe Mary's been our treasurer for 3.5 years, 3 years too. Yeah, but Mary does all the bookkeeping and the accounting and the reporting. They own a construction company, so she does that for their construction company, and she was nice enough to step in and do that for us. So all of these are unpaid positions. All of these are, volunteer positions. All of it's, elected. But as you've seen in the emails that we've sent out, if anybody wants to assist with any position, let us know. I mean, you can be assistant chairman if you want. If you want to come up here and do the stuff that we do, I'm happy to do that. But assistants in all these other positions or be on these committees, we've got plenty of positions and things for people to do. So either elected positions, appointed positions, however it works out. Some people don't want to run for election. Some people are more than happy to run for election. If you want to run for election, let us know that too. And because we got other people who don't want to run and rather be appointed, so we can stick you in there and get up there and give you a little 3-minute speech. It'd be fun. So we will see how it goes for Monday. But my anticipation is we're doing the meeting at the library, twofold. It's number one, it's free, so that's great. We appreciate that. It will hold up to 500 some odd people. We don't need that. So, we may have 200 or so there for all the precincts and presidents. And we're hoping, it'll start at 6 with our kind of open, action hour, social, that type of stuff, credentialing. We'll start the meeting sharply at 7, but hopefully come early, meet, talk to some other people, get to meet, this is the first part of a new 2-year term. So try to get to know some other people. When we start the meeting, we'll go through kind of the agenda. I will actually probably ask people that are new to stand up and introduce yourself and all that type of stuff. We do have to be finished by 8:30. So we got an hour and a half. So depending on, I'm hoping or expecting those particular races that are uncontested, we can just elect them all by acclamation. I would like everybody to know the people that are in those positions or know the committee members that'll be on those 4 standing committees. But, if we can elect them by acclamation, we can move forward with the contested race, and then we can move forward with further introductions of getting people to know each other. Our goal is what we do and what we've always done has been all about education. We want people to understand this. I think a lot of the other parties, certainly the state party, the establishment, if you will, they just like to ramrod things through and shut everybody up. We're happy to answer questions. We don't like people coming to meetings and asking questions to disrupt the meeting. We've had people do that in the past. And sometimes we'll let them do it, let them show themselves out, and then shut them down. people remember me from the old days, 4 years ago, we would have meetings that would, we've had some that would go to 11 o'clock at night, midnight. I mean, because I was all about letting these people have their voices heard. If
He's
you
not
want,
anymore.
I'm not anymore as much. So
We've
I-
learned
we've learned
it never works.
it doesn't work. They don't get any better. But and the good people have said they're frustrated, and they're like, let's get on with the business of the party.
Right.
So, that's what we'll do. Hopefully we'll be out of there by 8:30. We do put the chairs out. Hopefully we'll put the chairs up. And I think officially they say we have to shut down at 8:30 so we can be out by 5. That's when the library closed. But it's free parking, after 5, just come down there. There's a parking deck at the main Hughes Library downtown, and it should be easy. We've had meetings there before, and it's worked out real well. So it's very easy there. So anybody got questions about Monday? Everybody's an expert.
Know what I need to know.
I'm talking the basics because some people that have been new have actually given us some advice that, hey, you're not really talking the basics of what, we're assuming a lot of new people kind of understand what we've been doing and how we've been doing things.
You can talk
in the
about
past.
our new badges. that are
Yes.
coming in.
We are doing new badges for ECs and presidents. Each EC and president, they've gotten a badge before. They will continue to get those badges, because I look at it as a name tag, so you can identify what precinct they're from, what their name is, that type of stuff. But what we're going to do for each of the precincts, we're going to have a badge that is on the front. I don't know if you put it up or put it up there. I don't know, but you don't have to. But on one side, it'll be red, Greenville County Republican Party. It'll say the precinct name, the EC, and the president. And on the back side, we're going to put a piece of green cardboard paper in there. So we know what they're doing at the state party. They're voting with red card, green card, right? So we're going to learn red card, green card.
Is
So,
that like
so-
the state convention where they have little signs and insert them?
so we're going to,
The point is, it will be one badge per precinct.
right.
So now when you have the right to vote, since one person per precinct votes, and also only the person voting technically is allowed to speak on business, we will not have to try to identify from afar whether it's someone speaking that is not supposed to be speaking.
So in our
That's a
precinct,
good idea.
Yes.
it's going to-
it'll be very clear who is the
Yeah.
person voting because it's the person who has the badge.
So whoever representative, if my EC is going to be at the meeting, she will have this lanyard. If she's not present and I'm representing, I will have it, but only one person
Right.
per precinct will have it. If there is a proxy, they will have additional little thing attached to the lanyard that say proxy,
Uh-huh.
but it will still be just one per precinct.
So
Yes,
that'll make it
thank you.
clear. We
I
yes,
like
sir.
that.
Seating,
Seating?
yeah, when you have like two, if you have EC and president, only the EC can speak.
Some people like only the voting members sitting in the center.
Yeah, is that?
I hate splitting people up. I hate splitting up couples. I hate splitting up, folks that came together as friends and things like that. I'm more apt to just let people sit generally where they are, voting members, if they have a guest or their spouse or whatever, they can sit in that section too. And I think this will help us by having these badges. I think these voting badges, I think it'll be a lot clearer.
Along the same note of what you're saying, our EC turns to Shan for advice on stuff.
Yeah,
So
that's
sitting
not a
next
bad
to
idea.
each
Yes.
other, you can communicate
Right.
instead of just going, oh, wow, what did she say on this?
So
I think
I'm more flexible in that. I think we ought to be more flexible in
Yeah,
that.
in the past, if we do voice votes, people tend to, it's better when ECs sit in one section, so you don't have people that are not ECs voting. We don't do a lot of we do voice votes on obvious things, so it's not that big of a deal.
And most of our votes are pretty much unanimous. It's
So I
not,
don't think we have an
crazy.
issue of the cheating that we have to have ECs in one section so we can monitor them.
I think one of the ununanimous votes we had was censuring the county council members that voted for the tax increase.
If we had one.
And we had one member that voted not to censure them. I'm like, okay, That's the rhino. Yes, and he was. So, but he's no longer with
So
us.
I don't think there will be any restrictions on seating. I don't think we'll be doing that.
We'll ask, just so the teller committee, no, most people don't know these things. I mean, there's credentialing committee, just to go back to some of the basics. Credentialing committee are the people that actually check you in, credential you as being the valid person voting for your precinct, either as the chair, as the EC, or as the president, or as the proxy. That the credentialing committee are the ones that do that. That's Joe McLaughlin. He's been doing that for us for 4 years now. We've come a long way. Joe's been fantastic. He's very, he's the safety engineer at Kemet, chemicals, I guess. I don't know what Kemet does, but he's the safety guy there. Very, you got to do everything by the book. And Joe does all that stuff on the credentialing for us, to be able to say who's there, who's not there, all that kind of stuff. And, it's a term called the teller committee. Tellers are the people that count the votes. So, I mean, the teller committee will go, and that's I think, well, Heather Sheen, Holly, her mother's actually online today, but Heather has been our chair of that for, I guess, probably 4 years too. I'm not sure. And thankfully she's going to continue to do that some stuff. She was helping with her grandmother's son, but I think we're going to make the teller committee job and the credentialing committee job as easy as possible, so that people can, our goal with the Greenville County Republican Party is constant improvement, radical transparency, pushing the agenda of the Trump MAGA America First, agenda in this state. I think we're obviously kind of the hub of what that is in our state, even though it's a huge battle dealing with the establishment here. And we all know those issues and problems, but we're kind of, we want to be best in class, best practices for everything that we do. Even though this is all volunteer, we have people that are dedicated to doing stuff best practices and best in class. Because I've literally, probably this week, I've had 3 different county leaders reach out to me about how we do stuff. How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do this other thing? And I want to be able to easily show them, this is what we do. This is how we do it. This is where we think is the best way to do it. If you find a better way, please tell us so we can get better. And other people that look at the way we do things, we can actually, kind of improve upon that. So
The new badges, we stole the idea from Anderson.
yes, yeah, we don't come up with everything. I am a huge believer in, do anybody ever watch Star Trek and the Borg and all that good stuff? No. The Borg was a species that would go out and they would go take over a planet and take all their resources and all their technology and go to the next one. And then, they were pretty good at everything they did. Obviously, the humans won in the end, all right? It's the way it is. But they go out and find how is the best way to do stuff, and they suck that into what they do. So in this case, yes, we copied it from Anderson. They sent us the picture of it. I don't know why they.
No, I found it on Facebook.
Okay, Olga found it on Facebook. I mean, that's one good reason to be on Facebook. But we found it there, and we're like, holy cow, that's a great idea, and we copied it. So that's why we're doing that. So I think it's going to work out really well, and we're excited about that. And, obviously, we had to run it by our credentialing people and make sure they were okay with handing that out. And we made the decision to go ahead and hand out the normal lanyards and name tags. It's great to have name tags and all that kind of stuff. So let people know who each other are. So, I try to wear my name tag. Sometimes people don't know who I am, but often I talk to folks and I'm like, we've never met before, but I guess you've seen or talked to us and you think, I think we know each other, but it's nice to have a name tag. So, yes, sir.
The point I think you were making was that we've improved the way we run business. It's a lot smoother. The voting is great. And if we are sitting with our friends, it's easy to pull the voters back together as a group if that becomes an issue, like a close vote on something.
Yes.
And you can do it by person.
Yes.
Precinct.
Absolutely. What Ron is absolutely correct. And that's what we're looking to do. The other thing that we're very, very big on is we don't want anything to be a surprise. One of the counties, and not favorable to particular parties involved, but one of the counties, 3 people showed up at their first meeting, and guess what? There was a censure motion against the 3 of them. They had no earthly idea. They didn't know what was going on. They just stepped in, and it's like, holy cow, we get sideswiped. Guess who does that? Drew McKissick does that at the state party level. He did it to me. He did it. He's done it to a whole bunch of other people. When Pamela Godwin got, kicked out, improperly of her position in December of 23 as chair of the Lexington County Republican Party, we actually, as the America First counties, had come together. We knew what Drew was trying to do to kick her out. We had a plan to kind of go against what he was doing, or at least issues and things to raise, for the body to consider. Not that the body cares; they just do whatever Drew says. The majority of them do. Sadly, we're trying to fix that, and hopefully people will be more reasonable. But we went in there, and you know what they kicked her out for? Something we had not even thought of. They kicked her out for something she hadn't even done. They kicked her out for a Rule 16 violation, which is I cannot sue somebody else in the party, not on a personal level, but in regards to personal business. If you go and steal one of the computers right there, well, let's pick something that's an actual asset of the Greenville County Republican Party. If you go steal something that is an asset of the Greenville County Republican Party, I can't sue you to get it back. Else they will kick me out of the party. Now, I will certainly do things that will get the punishment by going to the police and doing all that kind of stuff. Let them deal with it. But that's what had happened in Lexington. There were some people that had taken the Facebook page. Somebody had access to the Facebook page, went rogue, took Pamela and her people off the Facebook page and rebranded it for their Lexington group. Just stole it. Same thing. There was two other things. I can't remember what they were, but it was the Facebook page. It was the email system, the email blast campaign system. Somebody had taken Pamela off, taken the chair off of the system. She had trusted these people, given them administrative rights, and they took her off and the other people that were aligned with her in the party, and said, you're no longer chair. They did that in June of when she had just been elected in April. They did that in June, and she was technically still even the chair, even under Drew's belief, until December, when the party kicked her out for trying to get those assets back. Those assets, the police had actually said, instead of actually, the police, the police reports and all that stuff, they said file some sort of magistrate's court thing to get the stuff back. So she herself did not file that. Who filed it was their committee of discipline, which they had, which is something you can set up under Robert's rules, and I think they officially set it up. The committee of discipline went and did that, and guess what? Even though Pamela's name was not on any legal documents, they sat there and kicked her out, saying that she was ultimately responsible as chair. So
Kind of like Curtis Loftus.
kind of like Curtis Loftus. Yes, that's a perfect example. They treated Pamela just like Curtis Loftus. They also treated, in this, y'all will find this interesting, in the 2022 elections, an America First chairman and group took over. They did what we did in Greenville, actually back in 2021. They took over the Oconee County Republican Party. The chair, it was a battle just like ours, and just like, they attack you and tell you you're an idiot and all that kind of stuff immediately after you take over. But the chair, what happened in the 2022 November election, somebody who had access to their email blast system did not like the candidate. I can't remember, is it Sandifer? I don't know if everybody remembers Representative Sandifer, Chairman Sandifer. He lost in the 24 elections, but they had run a candidate against him in the primary. Didn't work out. Sandifer was the nominee. Once we select a nominee, the party must support the nominee. We cannot support a write-in candidate. We cannot support a constitutional candidate. We can't support a libertarian candidate. We can't support a Democrat. Usually isn't a problem, but we have had Republicans that have endorsed and supported Democrats. So the party has to support the Republican nominee. Somebody got access to the email system, and he ended up admitting doing this later and all that stuff, and sent out an email blast from the Oconee County Republican Party saying to support the write-in candidate against Representative Sandifer in the November election. The person admitted it, said, I did it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. It was a mistake. Kicked me out of the party, blah, blah, blah. What did they do? They kicked the chairman out because they wanted to kick the chairman out.
That wasn't a mistake. A mistake is a mistake. This was deliberate what that guy did, it sounds.
So it is deliberate what the guy did. Yes. Yes. But he admitted that he
Yeah.
did it. He admitted all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Yes. But he certainly did not want his chairman being kicked out because of something he did. He was just, hey, let's just send out an email blast to vote for the write-in candidate against this rhino, which, it's a logical thing to think, but we as the party, we cannot do that. So as much as we may or may not like it, if so-and-so is our Republican nominee, pick a name. I mean, Henry McMaster, and several years ago, or Lindsey Graham, 6 years ago, he was our nominee 6 years ago. We cannot openly oppose or endorse against whoever that nominee is. So we have to keep our lips sealed and let other people go out and voice your opinion. So, but that is if you have a leadership position in the party at the county level or even the precinct level. So if you're a precinct DC, do not go out there and put on Facebook, I hate to say it, Lindsey Graham ends up being our nominee. Don't go out there saying vote for some write-in candidate or some other person if he ends up being the nominee. There's a very good chance he won't be. Because if you look at some of the numbers and his polling numbers, I mean, it's not good. It depends on who's going to, if we have a good candidate that's going to, be out there to raise the probably, as I think most people are forecasting, the $25 million you probably need to beat Lindsey's 150 if we're
Who's exactly running against him right now?
Right now, there is some gentleman, redheaded guy, something that's been in and out. I don't think he's Scott, so I don't know. If there's but Mark Lynch is kind of the more known candidate.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was somebody else or something.
I think, obviously we've seen two Democrats jump in the race this past week, which is I find quite interesting and humorous. I mean, they're crazy. I mean, they're not going to beat, I don't care who our Republican nominee is, I don't think. Even with Jamie Harrison.
Maybe though, keep the Democrats in the lower part of the state voting within their party.
With two Democrat candidates in the race, that's it's a very good thought. It may keep them out of our our Republican primary next June. So it may actually, for them, for their issue, it may be a mistake. Or, maybe a setup that, a Republican actually got somebody, two Democrats to run to keep people. You don't know. They play all kinds of games. I mean, it's really a strange world out there. But the other name that is being floated around, there was a Fitz News article about it earlier this week, or maybe just a text or whatnot, was a former Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer. Andre Bauer was the Lieutenant Governor. I don't know everything about him. I don't know a lot of his policies and all that type of stuff. What I do know is when we started working with the Trump team for his reelection in 24, when we started working with those guys, I guess, gosh, I don't know, it must have been mid 23. There were three people running the Trump campaign here. Austin McCubbin, who was running kind of the campaign piece of it, a guy by the name of Justin, and Austin's out of Charleston, a guy by the name of Justin Evans, who's out of Hartsville. He's more the PR and kind of, he was our liaison with the team up here out of Greenville. And the third person was Andre Bauer. I mean, so that was the three people that were in charge of kind of running his campaign, for his reelection campaign. And Andre was on early on and has known Trump, and Trump said very good things about him in the past. So obviously Trump has endorsed already Lindsey Graham. I don't pay any attention to that. I don't think we need to. I mean, he's got to get things done through Congress. We got 53 Republicans, and I wouldn't count all 53 of them as Republicans, but at least they're Republicans with their name next to them. He needs Lindsey to do certain things. He needs Lindsey to get through this big, beautiful bill, I guess, that they want to sign on July 4th, or Trump wants to sign on July 4th. And, he needs Lindsey to do stuff. So I would have expected Lindsey to endorse him. And, but I don't think Donald Trump and the Trump team are going to be or Trump people are going to be upset with us if we go against Lindsey Graham. So I would expect that is what's going to happen because Lindsey Graham doesn't reach out and meet or talk to us. So that's one of my rules. If you're not willing to meet and talk to us, and I've talked to some staff people and his chief of staff, and actually his Lindsey Graham's chief of staff lives here in Greenville, interestingly enough. We could talk about that later. There's some hints about that. But I'm like, they're not coordinating with the party. And not that I care, but I'm like, they're definitely on the other side in opposition of us. And, it is what it is. So,
It's old school politics.
Yeah.
You voted me in, so I'm going to do as I please.
yes, old school politics. You voted me in, so I'm going to do as I please. And that's a lot of how they participate. Now, Lindsey, as we know, has been supportive of Trump in many ways. He does, as Trump talked about in Pickens, or maybe other locations, he has said that, when he needs stuff from the Democrats, he sends Lindsey in to do it because obviously they're all friends. But I don't think if I was the U.S. Senator, they'd be sending me into the Democrats. So I guess you need somebody like that. But go find that in another state. I don't want it coming from South Carolina. So we'll find out what happens there. So I think we'll see on that Senate race. It's gonna. I will tell you, 26 is going to be the most interesting primary I think we have seen in a long time. I mean, obviously everybody got excited and all the things that went on with the presidential preference primary last February and February 24 with Trump and all that kind of stuff. Trump, DeSantis, Nikki, all that kind of jazz. It was very interesting. But I'm telling you, it is going to be a game changer and a direction changer for the state of South Carolina. We will get a new governor. We will get all new constitutional officers. I mean, not all new. They won't necessarily all be new, but I mean, we have the opportunity for all new or keep the good ones. Curtis Loftus, I think, is about the only good one I think we got left. But that we will get a new governor. McMaster is termed out, so so we've got that. We'll get a new, obviously, lieutenant governor that comes with him or her that they run as a team. But we'll get a new attorney general, which I think is a big deal. I think a big deal is obviously Alan Wilson wants to run for governor, or that's the rumor or what he's talking about. But Alan Wilson as our attorney general, to me, has not gone hard after corruption. Certainly hasn't gone hard after corruption. Hasn't gone hard after as we're seeing and as Nancy Mace is making a big deal out of it. He's not going hard after child pedophilia and trafficking and whatever the hell else that goes on with that. But I mean,
He's not going after the abortion pill either.
he's not going after the abortion pill piece of it. The mail order abortion pill stuff. These are red meat Republican issues, and he's not doing it. And I'm like, okay, so if you're not doing the red meat Republican things, who are you trying to appeal to, or do you just not believe in it? I don't know. I don't know. So I mean, he can go do a photo op, at Trump's trial in New York, or he can do a photo op here and there, but that doesn't mean there's a lot of people that say they support Trump or the Trump agenda or the America First agenda that aren't actually living up to that.
Right.
So what we're looking for are people that live up to it, and I think we're going to find some, and I think it's going to be exciting. So, yes.
Do you want to introduce a new guest? I think we have only one.
Yes. New guest.
Ryan.
Oh, you've been here before. You've been here before.
I've been here one other
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Ryan Childers. I'm the precinct president for Oakview. I am a political refugee from the People's Republic of California. Moved here 4.5 years ago and got 2 kids and a beautiful wife. We love it here.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Where in California?
El Centro, California, right on the border with Mexico and Arizona.
Oh, wow.
Santa Monica, San Luis Obispo.
Oh, I went to college in San Luis Obispo.
Really?
Yeah.
I taught there.
Really? We'll have to talk afterwards.
What Ryan has done in the past, Elise Cheney is his EC. So I think, did she recruit you into all this? How did you get it? How'd you find us?
I reached out and found out, the reorg was going on, not this last one, but the one before.
Okay.
And then the president resigned, and she called me and said, "Hey, you seem nice. How do you want to?"
That is our due diligence process. All too often, that is our due diligence.
You probably put a note in our file, like,
Seems nice.
Yeah. Well,
Three or
I'm not sure that's
potential.
exactly what she said.
Then we pass it to person. I mean, that's exactly how.
The good thing is Ryan has some experience in campaigns and running campaigns or doing stuff in campaigns. You want to tell us kind of what that experience might be?
Well, I mean, started all the way back with college Republicans in San Luis Obispo. In California, a lot of times it's just a losing battle, kind of sacrificial lambs. And then in law school, I ran a state senate campaign, another sacrificial lamb.
Well, wait a second, law school? I didn't know you went to law school too. Are you
Yeah,
a
I
lawyer?
practiced law for 17 years.
Oh, really?
I retired from that when I moved here, and
Okay. You didn't want to take the South Carolina bar?
no, I just don't want to deal with lawyers.
South Carolina is one of the very few states that has no reciprocity.
Yes,
It is a real problem that we have no I as a member of the Georgia bar, I could go to I think 40 or 44 other states in the District of Columbia and fill out the paperwork and get waived in to practice law there. I can't, my home state, I went to law school here. I can't do it here in the state of South Carolina. We have no reciprocity. You want to talk about an industry protection program? That's what it is. Because I will tell you, even the South Carolina bar exam is very tricky in the essay question piece of it. So you take at least this is the way it used to be. You take the multi-state exam, which is all multiple choice. I love multiple choice. But then you do the essays. But what they will do is they'll put something that an out-of-stater doesn't know the answer to, and that's how they keep the out-of-state people from taking the South Carolina bar. So I've actually sent some inquiries into the Bar Association, to our new state Supreme Court justice. He's actually referred it over to the Bar Association to look at, to allow South Carolina to at least start experimenting with reciprocity. We have a lot of lawyers up in Charlotte or in Augusta or wherever that at least if we did it with North Carolina and Georgia, I just care about Georgia. So I could practice here and do at least have some protections and some interesting things. So what kind of law do you practice?
Estate planning, probate, business stuff.
Okay, yeah,
Represented government entities, things like that.
that's neat. Good. We like lawyers. They're very logical. Lawyers and accountants. That's what we need more of. And we need more lawyers and accountants getting involved in some of this type of stuff. And one of the best videos that we ever did with meetings we ever had with a video I used to share all the time was when Curtis Loftus came and spoke to us at the Greenville Tea Party down at Zen. And Curtis actually talked about that. He's like, we can go do all the stuff we do and all that kind of jazz, but we need people getting involved in the nitty gritty. We need more CPAs looking at the numbers. And this video is, I would say it's probably from 17 or 18, maybe 19. I mean, what he was talking about was Doge. He was talking, and I think the people are Doge. You, me, we all go in there, FOIA stuff, get the documents, start asking questions. That's what Doge is. That's how we find out the waste, fraud, and abuse that's going on. That there's probably a whole lot more locally, than the federal level. So I mean, that's how we find it. So, but some of that stuff's technical. There's a lot of and a lot of CPAs lawyers don't want to get involved in all that kind of stuff because they have to deal with these people in their professional lives, and they don't want to be the squeaky wheel that's causing a problem. I became squeaky, and I guess I'm stuck on squeaky. So I might as well just go down with the ship or keep fighting with it until we win. Actually, that's kind of the better way to say it, because I really, as y'all know, and I think as we were all seeing, we are winning this battle. We really, really, really are. And if people are getting tired of the fight, we need to realize we're winning the battle.
Mhm.
And we have come so far since Trump was elected. And even when Trump was elected, there's a lot of things we didn't even know what was going on. And he has learned so much in taking that 4 years off. That might have been a little God's wink, say, hey, maybe, why don't you sit over there for 4 years? And they came up with their America First policy group or whatever. They were ready to hit the ground running, and I like what we're doing in this 4 years than what I think Trump would have done in the past 4 years. So I think America and the world woke up to it. So that's great. So Yes, I know. So, but Ryan may end up, I think he's going to be my appointee to the candidate recruitment committee, so he can help us with some campaigns. That's why I said earlier before we came on, he said he did some campaigns. So I said, no, he said used to. I said, no, you do. So he's being, as they say, voluntold.
I second that.
I like that.
So we don't volunteer around here, you're voluntold. And I'm voluntold for a lot of stuff too. So it's a two-way ship. So is that the only, anybody have anything they want to particularly talk about or introduce or ask? We can do it later. What's the next thing? Oh, yep.
Is there any reason Ryan can't run for the recruitment committee?
He can. I mean, you know, the people we have on the recruitment committee that will run on Monday has been Jim Slice and is going to be Olga as our first two. But it doesn't matter. It's all interchangeable. If Jim or Olga, if y'all rather, you know, one of y'all, you know.
I'd be happy to be an appointee.
See there? But you ran such a great campaign for your wife to become EC. I don't know, you know how to campaign. So Ryan, would you like to run for it? Introduce Ryan?
Yeah, you tell me, yeah.
Voluntold.
You and Olga y'all may or may not have to say anything, and maybe by acclamation, but we'll switch those names up, Jim, and then
Wonderful.
and Jim will be the appointee, and you'll get to voice who you
Thanks,
are.
I think, Jim.
You'll have so much authority. Isn't that responsibility he's gonna have, not authority?
Yes, we all have responsibilities, no authority.
You apply to CYA.
Yes.
You want committee information now or later?
If you'd like to, I mean, yeah. Do we want to do the pro-life committee update? Let's do the pro-life committee update. You want to go ahead? That'd be fine.
Thank you. Monday, the 9th, week after the elections, I'll be giving a talk on abortion and all three bills. It's going to be at Denny, 6:30. You can get there as early as 5:30 for food. For July,
And do we have that on the events
I think
calendar?
we already do, yes. I probably haven't sent it to Ray, but it's okay.
and I'll be getting to the website stuff here in a moment. For July, we're looking at Vegas Baby. I've reached out to the producer to see if we can get permission to do it. Vegas
Okay.
Baby talks about IVF. It's a game that they play in Vegas where desperate couples can compete to earn the right to get one chance for an IVF. So
Okay.
I think it's going to be an interesting movie if I can get the rights to do a screening of it. I have a gentleman coming in is going to talk about adoption in August, and we need to reach out. But September, the idea is to see if we can't get a legislator from Missouri to talk about, because Missouri is a no abortion state. So looking to maybe see if we can't do like a Zoom call.
Yes. And when did Missouri pass that?
Um,
Was it recently? It seems like it was recent.
Yeah, it was.
Years ago, but it was overturned. And it's not a legislator, it's one of the three main people that unified Missouri.
Right.
All the lobby organizations that fight with each other in
Right.
every state, they were able to unify and ban, they were the first state to ban abortion, but unfortunately, an amendment last year overturned their ban.
Okay. And so the amendment overturned it, and then how did we get back to?
We're not back. I
Oh,
mean,
we're not?
But
Okay.
she helped us.
Okay.
She was in one of our meetings.
Okay.
She's a very dynamic, energetic woman who had the ability to unify all the pro-life groups in the whole state of Missouri.
Which has been what I think, and we've talked about, that needs to happen in this state. There's too much infighting, and it goes on. It's not just the pro-life. It certainly goes on the school choice side, but people need to sit. And my theory has always been, if you're in pro-life, school choice, whatever it is, get all the parties together and say, we're going to have a meeting. We'll make it convenient for you. But if you don't show, you're not part of the group anymore. And, hopefully you'll get more than 50%, you end up being, on that side. But I mean, anybody that's not willing to come to the table and have a discussion about how we can, make South Carolina a more pro-life state, or how we can make it more pro school choice, or pick whatever our pro anything, whatever our, pick the conservative topic that's in the Republican platform. And if you're not willing to come sit down, put aside whatever your personal differences, your whatever, and actually talk about how we can work together, then maybe there's a bigger problem. People probably get tired of me saying it all the time. I'm willing to sit down and talk to anybody about anything. I really am. And you think, literally, we were accused by somebody on our treasurer's report of what are we sending $35 to London for? We pay for a web service that's our Greenville GOP. It's all outside the United States because we started it back in 2021 when they were sitting down, U.S. based companies were shutting people down. We found a service, a WordPress server, whatever, Kinsta, and I think it's actually out of Sweden, where they're not going to shut us down because it was a very real issue in 21 and 22. And then I got somebody literally asking, why do we pay that? Like we're sending, somebody said yesterday, we're sending $35 to somebody with the MI6.
Well, I think asking is okay. The
Asking is
problem
okay.
It's one of our very, very engaged
Oh,
people, and we have been paying the $35 for the last 3.5 years. So anyway, if someone is curious, you can ask, but someone who should have asked that maybe privately versus posting it, making it look like there's something weird going on.
Right. And they also complained about
That follow-up post about why didn't you ask in person?
Oh,
Yes.
That was the
That was
perfect answer to
Right.
that post.
Because again, it's okay to ask. Not you should ask actually if it looks weird, but there is a clear answer to it. Don't make it look like it's $35.
all I said is thank God it's not in Poland, because if it was in Poland, it would probably like, oh, we're paying for Olga's family or something. Her brother did live in England. But that is the same type of stuff, and this is. Oh, you got more? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
almost.
Ray always has more.
Yeah.
Ray is the pro-life committee is literally our best committee. I hate to that's not disrespectful to the legislative committee or anything, but I'm like, you have never seen people work harder, and we're trying to emulate you with every committee. So go ahead.
Thank you. I inherited a great committee. Volunteers, I'm going to be talking with David tonight about web issues. It was supposed to take place last night. It didn't happen, but we're getting together tonight. We're going to work out a lot of the web issues, and we'll be coordinating with this place as well after the meeting. I got Darren and Sydney working on reaching out to other counties. Darren's working political, Sydney's working non-political contacts.
Okay. Good luck, Darren. Darren's actually online, I think so.
It's slow and it's like pulling teeth, slow and painful, but the dentist wins in the end.
Yeah.
Little bit by little bit, I'm building up my list.
We are going to win this battle. I can assure you. We're not going to stop until we get a unified group that's going to work on that issue and all these other issues.
And I kept the previous promise. I have a list of everyone who abandoned the family caucus. This list will certainly be available next year when we start talking primaries.
Talk to Ryan.
Will do.
Campaigns.
Absolutely.
We do look past our borders sometimes. So
But yeah, they found the family caucus updated their website. Took some time, but it was real easy because all I had to do was take the names from before they updated the website and compared it to what was there afterwards, as opposed to trying to read all these
there are
doctor
some
writings.
that got off early. Like maybe I think Shannon Erickson is one of them. She should be on your list because I think she got out. I think maybe a year or so ago. But let's make sure we get all of them.
Right. Yeah. Pending any questions, that concludes my report for today.
Kind of update us on the family caucus, people leaving the family caucus and what's behind that.
Students for Life got overzealous.
There was a big exodus, I would say, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, a month ago, from the Family Caucus. Family Caucus was founded, and the main founder is Representative McCravey, who came and spoke at our February meeting. Remember Representative McCravey, that's one of his main things is he has one of the 3 bills that are out there. There's the equal protection bill, which is, full speed. There is McCravy's bill, which I think does have some, it's something that, not what they wanted, but it was something they thought they could get through. And then I think Senator Cash has a third bill.
Okay. Yeah, if I can borrow this real quick. Yeah, we got these. I'm going to talk all about the ins and outs of all three bills in the law. I believe there's a stack of these at the front door now. Some of them are floating around on the tables,
But if you remember at the meeting, McCravy said they had promised him to bring up if he would be quiet or would sit on the sidelines in 24, they would bring up his bill, which I think most people are kind of like, let's get behind McCravy's bill. It's what we think we can get passed. Appreciate the equal protection people, obviously. But they were like, let's get behind this and see what we can do. And, it had a lot of support, Family Caucus, a lot of supporters, all that type of stuff. And guess what happened? It didn't come up. What were the other things that were supposed to come up in the 25 session? The number one thing was supposed to be the school choice. They talked about it and did some stuff. When did they finally sign the bad school choice bill? In May. I think it was there at the end. They weren't doing anything to push the agenda. But in that respect, they left it on the sidelines completely. And I think that ultimately McCravy maybe said a few things. I don't know if he actually even did anything that atrocious, but I think they used as an excuse the Students for Life action folks that came into the state and actually, I think they door knocked and they maybe went to some legislators' churches and handed out flyers. And I don't know, I haven't seen one of the flyers to know if they were like really offensive and attacking or something like that. I don't assume they were. It could have been, different people practice different types of advocacy. But the leadership in the House said, let's blackball the heck out of McCravy and the Family Caucus.
What exactly is the Family Caucus?
It's just a group of legislators. Some of them were more establishment,
There was,
private.
55 legislators, more than
Yeah.
the Freedom Caucus,
Yeah.
and
And it was House and Senate. There were senators too.
Yeah,
So
there
it
was-
was both.
they had a whole meeting at North Greenville College, university that Ron went to, right? They were a strong group. They actually, because they did have some of the rhinos, they actually could do something.
Yes. And one would think every single Republican ought to be part of a Family Caucus, right? And I'm like, it is our platform, essentially, what they are doing. And it's kind of like, why are we not all part of that?
They were Christian oriented centralists.
Right.
That's why they're at Greenville University. And their objective is how to get legislation passed. And that was really the emphasis.
But they blamed McCravy for Students for Life aggressive actions, and because he didn't tell them to stop. But he's not in authority over Students for Life. They're a private group. Secondly, McCravy has admitted to criticizing, Newton's the head of the judiciary, and he appointed Bernstein to the head of one of the subcommittees, and she's a liberal Democrat. So why would a Republican appoint a Democrat when he can appoint Republicans and there's a Republican supermajority? So all he did, as far as he said, and I believe him, is say, why would you appoint a liberal Democrat? Whether or not he referred to the fact that she's Jewish or said some other racial slur against someone else, I don't believe he did, but they accused him of doing that.
Yes. But this, and we'll talk about the next thing is coming up. But look at the manipulation. They tried to sit there and say McCravy made some religious Jewish slur. Beth is Jewish. She and I think her twin brother. We all went to law school together. But she is a liberal Democrat, pro-abortion, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, why would you appoint her to run a committee that would
And
have
that's
some
not
oversight?
a racial slur. You're simply pointing out she's a liberal Democrat. There should be nothing wrong with that.
No, it shouldn't. I hope not.
also,
Because I do it all the time.
I also want to point out Representatives Grant and Jermaine Johnson, which filed H 5556 to formally censor McCravy. So those are two more names we want to remember next year.
But look what they try to do. In politics, and a lot of people, they say, why can't we all come together and why is all this infighting and all this type of stuff? Look at our own party, locally and or statewide. A lot of people, this is how they make their advocacy. Their advocacy is, oh, I know who Jeff Davis is. Jeff Davis is probably more Freedom Caucus than any of the Freedom Caucus people, and that type of stuff. So, we got to get rid of him. So let's start slandering him. The first slanders were, I was disbarred from the practice of law. I'm not from South Carolina. I moved here from Georgia, as a carpetbagger.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. But they did the same thing to Lynn Wood. They called him a carpetbagger from Georgia, and he was from Macon. I'm from Charleston, but they called me a carpetbagger from Atlanta. And literally, I've had legislators, powerful legislators, literally, tell me, and remember Herb Kurzman said it, that he was told that Olga and I had destroyed school choice in the state of Georgia, and we had moved to South Carolina to destroy it here. That's what Herb Kurzman, who was actually on the conference committee for the budget back in 2016, was told.
I think what was more interesting on one of your hearings in court, the judge started the hearing with, so were you from in Georgia?
It was
why? Before any discussion started, we're like, how would you ever think I'm from Georgia? Who told you that? Like to the judge.
Why would a judge know anything about my personal life?
Right.
Or to even pick up the false, talking points from the other side.
It was so interesting.
And I think it's pretty clear now. I don't know, but I would tell you probably in 2016, 17, or when we were fighting on the school choice stuff, I think about 90% of the people thought I was disbarred for the practice of law. That's what they told people. It's defamation per se. It's, you don't even have to prove damages.
Wow.
But it's in the person who started it, the first person I ever heard that said that person told me was Ellen Weaver, our superintendent of education.
Oh.
She was the head of Palmetto Promise Institute. Jim DeMint backs the Freedom Caucus, who now backs government-run school choice. It was her that told Presley Stutz that I was, disbarred from the practice of law in Georgia. It is dirty. It is a dirty, dirty game. But why those people won't come to the table, and this is why I kind of have that theory. You either come to the table or you got an ulterior motive and you need to be blackballed yourself in that sense. Not that I like it. Keep the door wide open. Trump's like, we want to build a wall, but have a big, beautiful, door to come in if you want to. But, let them have an ability to reconcile or repent or whatever and come back into the fold. But if you're unwilling to talk, you're probably pushing an agenda that is not disclosed, or your donors are doing something or something of that nature. So a lot of people say, well, this person won't talk to Jeff. Well, the question is not, Jeff, requires people to talk to him, or why does that person not want to talk to Jeff? We can talk about it. Why does Mark Lynch not want to talk to Jeff Davis? 3.5 years. 3 years. Yes. No, he won't. He will not. He will not. But look at all of the hate that has started to come out toward me in the past, I would say 2 weeks or so, from people that support Mark Lynch. Do you think it's a coincidence?
Wow.
It's sometimes, Jeff, we had an example yesterday. If you are EC, you probably got a call from Gwen reminding you about the meeting over the last few days. And Gwen is wonderful. She's the best, volunteer to call. She's the sweetest lady. So she was making these calls over the last few days. And yesterday I was here and she was talking to someone and I could tell she was getting more and more uncomfortable because the person was just asking her questions.
Gwen is the sweetest, nicest lady on the planet.
She didn't have
and
answers.
For somebody to be attacking on her.
I keep hearing her saying, no, there's a difference between required or recommended. So I keep giving her face, if you want to hand me the phone. And sure enough, she did, because, she didn't have answers. And it was one of our ECs that doesn't really work with us. He used to be actually a candidate for House. So a person that knows what they're doing. He did not like the fact that we were doing a slate for state delegates, and we were, we had a committee that was putting the slate together, and he received a call basically to be vetted, or that's how we call it, that you're going to be available to go to the state, that to make it clear that we are for changing the leadership party in Colombia, so we are unified in that idea. And he did not like it, and he was taking it out on Gwen. So when I took the phone and I said, if you have all these questions, you can call the chairman or, anyone on the leadership board. Just don't do that to our volunteer. That she
Most of the
doesn't
time they're
know.
scared to call me, so
Right,
I've
but,
got to reach out to this person.
Now Randy, they're scared of me too, because he said, well, I gotta take another call. And I said, well, that's interesting because you just spent 10 minutes harassing Gwen when she kept telling you, well, I don't know and about that. It was not me doing it. Maybe you should call someone else. And now you have to go take the call.
But think about the flip side of that too. That person has an agenda counter to what we're doing.
Right.
Well, is it an agenda or is it a mental illness that they want to
There you
feel
go.
better about harassing someone?
That's right.
That is not that Gwen cannot handle him. She just didn't. Yeah, being a bully.
Yes.
Yeah.
It could be one or the other, but let's.
It's JDS, Jeff.
Yeah, there's the Jeff Davis derangement syndrome, like the Trump derangement syndrome. But look at he certainly has, I think, a different agenda than us. And I think how some of these people want to do is they want to drive people away from the party.
Oh, he said that word to so many people left the party, and Gwen was like, I don't know any.
But you take a nice person that has to deal with those types of calls. It's one
Right.
thing when you're dealing with the crazy liberal Democrats, and we all, it upsets Gwen too, but for some of us, we just laugh at it. But if it's somebody who's then purporting to be a Republican, purporting to be, I'm all about this, blah, 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 and especially if they purport to be a Trump supporter, and then they treat people badly, what are they really trying to do? Are they trying to put what they think their politics, is that their advocacy? Is their advocacy to sit there and say, you know what, I can't sit down and have a normal discussion with these people because I'm saying I want one thing, but I really want something else. So they're going to catch me in it, which is what I do with the Freedom Caucus. Like, you say you're about liberty, so why are you pushing big government school choice? You say you're about liberty, why are you pushing, a pre-K learning program, which is a darling of the Democrats, and putting library employees on all 46 plus boards for, first steps, right? Just, can you explain it? I've asked. They refuse to discuss it. That's just the things I know about. What are the other ones we don't? Which gets to what I think is going to be very exciting. We put it out on the Signal thread today, but apparently Merle Smith, who he's Speaker of the House. I'm not a fan of Merle Smith, so is there something else, or did you get your question about McCravey? Oh,
Just one other pro-life event is the Love Life Girl Walk. Is it June 14th? 2 weeks from this Saturday.
I believe it is.
So we've done this every year in June as the anniversary of the overturn of Roe v. Wade. So this will be the 3rd anniversary, and everybody can come. It's at 9:30. You meet at the church down the road, and we walk across the street from the abortion clinic. Even though it's now closed on Saturday, we still pray. And so we'll be praying, and it's June 14th?
Yes.
So Saturday, June 14th, Love Life is doing a prayer walk on that Saturday. So, and you made a good point. The abortion clinic is now closed on Saturdays
And Friday,
and Fridays. So what days is it open?
Monday through Thursday.
Okay, all right.
They were closed last Monday this week though for Memorial
Memorial Day. And even though they're being closed, which is a positive step, a big part of the problem is just the abortion pills being mailed. And so that's where we think, the numbers are still rising or going up. And that's the data that I've seen. So you'll know more, but that's obviously a different issue. But what Merle Smith put out today, or whenever, I don't know where Olga found it, but she shared with me today, and we shared it out with some folks, is we're hearing the talk, which is supposed to rile all of us up. I've gotten the text messages, that the legislators have given themselves 150%, raise, blah, 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 all this type of stuff. What they put in the budget, and they did it in a very stupid way, leadership, down there. They did it at the last minute they threw in an extra $1,500. They get $1,000. They get their pay, which is $10,400 a year, I guess. They also get what's called in-district stipend. So I mean, it's $1,000 a month. I think it's been $1,000 a month for decades. I don't know the specifics, but they put in the budget to increase it from 1,000 to 2,500. It's tax-free money. I mean, it's like supposedly an expense reimbursement for whatever you may or may not do. And, sometimes you give 1,000 or 500 or, meals and entertainment expenses. There's a de minimis amount that you don't have to keep receipts of. Joe Farmer made the comment, that they ought to be providing receipts anyhow. I mean, if you want your $2,500, show us what you're spending on. I don't have a particular problem with the extra money. I have a particular problem with the fact that, because all of us are, have way more, nobody's, certainly on our side, and certainly good legislators are not getting rich. I think they're probably getting, 100 times more money on the nefarious stuff they're doing. But it goes from 1,000 to 2,500. That's 150%. So they're now calling it 150% pay raise. Well, I got the text about my legislator, and I don't even know his position on it. I think he may have voted against it. I don't even know. I have to ask. But I got the text from the American Action Fund, which is the same people. Everybody ever heard of the American Action Fund? They're a part of or affiliated in some form or fashion with Young Americans for Liberty. Maybe you've heard of them. They're the ones that send in the door knockers, win at the door. If I'm running for a House seat and I'm one of their people, they'll send in all these out-of-state door knockers to come knock on doors. It's probably a value of, they've always, told me and told others that, the value is $30,000 to $50,000. If you're going to be our guy, we're going to, support you. We'll send in door knockers and do mailers and do all that type of stuff. And they've been around, and, some of these legislators want it. Somebody's on the Freedom Caucus, they want it. I've had the discussion with them that's dark money. Who are the donors to American Freedom Fund or Young Americans for Liberty, who are both libertarian groups? They really don't conform with what the Republican Party does, but for some reason, and we've been to a lot of Young Americans for Liberty stuff in the past, and Olga's on their list because she was a donor in the past. But Yao used to support our school choice, which is limited government. But guess what? Young Americans for Liberty now supports ESAs, 100% government run. What changed? What changed? And what libertarian group actually supports government run anything? So that's kind of step one. But we got those texts. But what Merle, and just so you know, I'm not, obviously everybody knows I'm not a Rhino supporter. And Merle in particular, who's another, I think he was a year ahead of me in law school. We may have been in the same class, I'm not sure. But Merle was actually, he's the guy stopping our school choice in the South Carolina House of Representatives. I've had multiple people tell me that, and I got a real problem with it. And, it's because he's friends with Chad Conley and all those people. And, but Merle put out something, said, if you're going to complain about it, you're complaining about this extra $1,500 a month stipend. Here's a document you can sign and forgo. You don't have to get it. It's kind of like we all complain, we all sit there and tell the Democrats all complain, oh, you want tax cuts. I'm like, yeah, we want tax cuts, but you're taking advantage of them. Just send more money to the IRS. You don't have to take advantage of the tax cuts. You don't have to do it. And they never do. The Democrats are probably worse at taking advantage of the tax cuts. So, I mean, and Merle gave them a deadline of June 9th to sign this document and say, I don't want the extra $1,500 a month. And it's through the rest of their term, which is November of 26. So, I mean, sign the dotted line and you will not get an extra $33,000. Okay. I am very curious. I'm hopeful that I will be impressed, but I will be very curious to see who actually says, don't give it to me. I bet you, I almost wouldn't be surprised if some of the rhinos actually say, that's okay, I don't need it. Because some of them are rich or whatever, but some of these other people, it'll be interesting. I mean, I voted against the budget because they're doing this raise in there. Okay, here you go. Put your money where your mouth is.
Don't take the money. And like I said earlier,
before we started. It's the fact that these people said, oh, I voted against the budget because of this. They voted against because they knew there was overwhelming support of it. They knew their vote was going to be counted out. So they were like,
You
hey, I voted against it,
you
but I
said
still
it
took the money.
exactly. People, I have seen it before. Legislators, we're a minority. We vote against this stuff so we can appeal to all the MAGA America First people that are all about limited government and all that kind of stuff. And then, but when they get into power, or their vote makes a difference, they vote the other way, right? So it has consistently happened. Literally in the old days, we used to point it out. Leadership would say, "Hey, Ryan, I know you come from a crazy, MAGA district. You're a House rep, and you come from a crazy district. You can go ahead and vote against this. We're going to get it passed anyhow." So he has the authority to vote against it, knowing it's going to get passed anyhow.
The blessing of the party to vote against it.
Right. They get the
He
blessing to
saves
vote
face
against
with
it.
his constituents.
Yeah.
Even though he's going to take advantage of it when the time comes. Right?
I mean, and it was funny. There was a whole uproar here in Greenville about whatever Bruce Bannister and those guys were trying to do on the House side to take over, I guess, the garbage thing in the city of Greenville. I mean, remember that a month or two or three ago?
Shut Greenville sanitation down.
Yes.
They violated their regulations.
I mean, it was like,
Their governance.
you knew something nefarious was going on. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And it's another one of those things they just pop up and kind of do. And it's kind of like nobody really knows or understands. And a lot of people got upset about it. And I think we talked about it. Yes. But it passed the House. Well, it gets to the Senate. And then the Senate side, they only voted, I guess, the Greenville legislative delegation. So there's only a few senators that were voting on it. But when they had the vote, I remember watching the video. We ought to pull the video back up and put it out there. But there was a particular senator, they all voted against it, but there was one senator that had to go through the roll call like 2 or 3 times. It's not a senator you would expect to vote in favor of it. But he was not he was not sure what to do. And he sat there and said, everybody else had voted against it, but I guess he had probably made some promises to get it through. And it's not the person you would expect. So
I wouldn't be surprised if Bannister didn't get some kind of contribution to his campaign from these smaller sanitation companies that want to privatize it, because actually privatizing it makes it cost more money. I lived in an area where it was privatized before, and they say, "Oh, it'll save you money." No, it actually costs 3 times as much for the same monthly service.
But what you're talking about, what you mentioned, is you wouldn't be surprised if they got a political donation.
Yep.
That's all public. You can go look it up, right? It's not the political donations. It's, I'm going to send all my legal work to your law firm. Where's that disclosed? Nowhere. You're a lawyer. If I get, how they do it here, I could give Ryan, if you were a member of the South Carolina Bar and you were a House rep, I'd give you $1 million retainer. I say, take all, you be my guy. And I've had clients pay me a retainer before. It's just, I got to get my $3,000 or whatever, $2,000 a month. And, it's kind of like, just take $10,000 off. And I end up not calling him for 6 months. It's kind of a package deal in some respects. That's not disclosed anywhere. Nobody would know. Nobody would know if I gave Jason Elliott $1 million retainer and said, take off $10,000 a month or $20,000 a month. Nobody would know. There's where the real problem is. It's not the $1,000 donation, or we packaged up $10,000 donations. It's the other side of it. The other people that you'll notice, there's a lot of lawyers down there, and there's a lot of insurance people.
Yep.
Property and casualty insurance. We've been in that some clients in that business and all that stuff in the past. If I'm insuring my, BMW probably self-insures, but pick a company that probably, hires, Marsh McLennan or big companies to do their insurance, Chubb and that type of stuff. They're insuring their $100 million manufacturing plant. And guess what? I have to go through a broker to get to Chubb and those guys. The broker gets a percentage cut. $100 million factory, it doesn't matter whether I go through this insurance broker, that insurance broker, this insurance broker. I still get the Chubb insurance or the, whatever the other ones are that are out there. But it doesn't matter to me because either one, I usually pick the one that gives me better service, right? Because they're looking out for me, they're digging into the weeds, they're figuring all out, all the little angles of where I can save and do all that kind of stuff. But if I'm looking for some legislative help, I'm going to pick the lawyer insurance guy. I'm sorry, legislator insurance guy. And guess what? That legislator all of a sudden starts getting an extra $100,000 a year in commissions because I'm paying a lot for $100 million, manufacturing plant. Nobody knows about it. The former head of House Ways and Means was a guy by the name of Brian White. That's what Brian White did. Brian White, I would love to have seen his commission schedule, where he was getting it before he got unelected and while he was chairman of House Ways and Means. He was everywhere. I'm sure he was getting it. I ought to look him up, see if he still even works at the big company he worked for. Because, that's, they probably cut him loose because he probably wasn't getting why would I keep giving it to Brian White? I'll start giving it to another guy or lady that's a House rep that can, get some influence down in the State House. So it's a dirty business, and the more people need, more we learn, the more we can kind of figure it out. But that's why I kind of live on the edge of, realize they're all lying to you. You can trust but verify, whatever all that kind of stuff you want to say.
Until we correct the issue, which is the main issue, is that if you're in a political position, whether it be in the state or the federal government, and you run for that position, every penny you make has to be disclosed, every cent. And it don't matter if it's from your freaking paper route that you run on the side. You got to disclose every dime that comes in. So,
I hear what you're saying, and I agree to a certain extent that they ought to have an open kimono kind of thing. Even their family members type, you ought to be able to. The way I think we can correct it is instead of saying, "Oh, you got to publish for the world your tax." Trump didn't disclose his tax returns. I would never tell him to disclose his tax returns. I will tell you, they would probably eat him alive, and he wouldn't even know what it was. The CPAs and the guys like me. The New York tax return is that thick. I mean, God only knows what. Then you got multiple years. No telling what they would find in there and nitpick him to death about. But I'm sure there's things in there that guys like me did that he didn't even know what it was. They just knew they were, hey, I'm hiring the big firm and they're doing this stuff for me, and that's what you do, because that's what those kind of clients do. But you can have a independent group that is under some sort of confidentiality. The South Carolina House of Representatives or State House could have a confidential group that you could give access to all your financials. Here, sign a waiver, and I can come in and look at all your stuff. I wouldn't care. I mean, unless you're doing something, you might not be, you might be embarrassed about it. You might not. Hey, it's private, but I mean, if it's a group of lawyers and CPAs over here that are really out there to make sure you're not going corrupt, look at all my stuff. It can be done without disclosing to the entire planet all the stuff. So people nitpick about why you sending $35 to London. So you don't want to deal with that. So, but I mean, why do they not do it? And my thing has always been, when it's a simple thing to fix and they won't do it,
because they're hiding something.
it's because something else. It's like with the elections. It's simple to fix.
It boils down to the ethics.
Right.
The ethic, when you got the fox guard in the hen house, all the hens are going to be eaten up.
Right.
And that's what's happening.
But
because you have them guarding or watching over themselves.
Yeah.
That's no more. That's no better than having a 2-year-old.
We all know. We've all heard about what do they call them? What's the group that? Oh, the Inspector General.
Yeah.
Inspector General for the state of South Carolina. It's set up. It's a separate group. We've actually been to their offices a couple times, had to look at and do some reports. The Inspector General can look into about everything except what? The legislature. Yeah, they can look into the executive branch, governor's office, all these different, groups and all this stuff, but they can't look at the legislature. The legislature enabled them. The legislature, created the Inspector General's office. The legislature funds the Inspector General's office. The only person they can't look into is them.
People holding their
Yeah.
purse, which sounds like the same thing. Ethics.
Yes.
Wow.
I went down there one time and there were two House reps with me when we went in to meet with the Inspector General. And I don't know if he knew they were coming. I thought we told him they were coming. I don't know. But the Inspector General was about freaked out because these two legislators were there. And I don't know why necessarily, because it was the other stuff or people higher than these two legislators were were really pulling the strings on this particular investigation in the House, an ex-House member. But I'm like, he was freaked out because those House members were there. And I'm like, why would we be freaked out? They got the same questions I got. And these were new, they were relatively new House reps at the time. So they didn't, I don't think they even knew, the level of the corruption that was going on down there, from other more senior House reps back in the day.
So is there any group that investigates the legislature?
The Attorney General can. That's it. But do you think Alan Wilson's going to do it? The only person or entities that can look into nonprofits are the Attorney General and the Secretary of State's office. I couldn't get the Attorney General or the Secretary of State's office. Well, the Attorney General ended up doing it to a certain extent with the misappropriation or whatever of the $275,406 with exceptional SC. It was missing money. I mean, if they clear violation of the law, the Department of Revenue told them they were violating the law, and the money was supposed to go to kids' scholarships, and it didn't. The Secretary of State's office refused to look at it at all, and the Attorney General, I guess, just to get us off his back, referred it over to SLED. And SLED obviously told us it was a big problem, and then when it got back to the Attorney General, they were like, "Oh, there's nothing here. There's no criminal intent." So, so that's kind of what we're dealing with.
Wow.
So, but there's a lot to learn, and we want people learning a lot more. But we've had some conversations lately. I know we push a lot of legislative issues, and we will continue to fight those legislative issues. But the real problem, and as I've told some legislators, the real problem are the people that are down there. We got to replace them with people that actually do care and actually do want to do the right stuff, that aren't there for the titles, aren't there for the pomp and circumstance, aren't there to make money. Trump was probably the first person elected president that probably lost money, and look what they do. They call him
George Washington.
Well, George Washington, yes. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
So
The only
people,
two presidents that ever lose money, George Washington and Donald Trump.
so people protect the Politburo, I mean the legislature.
Oh, you got it right.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
It's protected all over the place, and it's crystal clear. And I've seen some of the stuff that came out of the budget, this year. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible stuff. I mean, it's horrible. The other stuff is what I got real problems with. A legislator that is a mechanic or a regular person legislator, I want them to be able to take time off and get $2,500 a month versus $1,000, to go do stuff. I'd rather an electrician do it, be elected to office and say, hey, I can take time off for my business or whatever. But the only people who take time off are the lawyers, the insurance people, the real estate people. Because they can work remotely and do things and get referrals through what they know and all that type of stuff. And I'm like, where's the electrician? Josiah Magnuson used to be an electrician. What is he now?
Politician?
He's a politician, yes, but his employment is he's an education consultant. I didn't become an education consultant. He has to make a living. I get it. I get that part of it. I think Josiah Magnuson would be a better person and politician if he was still an electrician and we were paying him $100,000 a year as a legislator versus the $10,400 and $1,000 a month stipend. We can talk about it. It's a discussion worth talking about, but I'm like, no, he's now, in my opinion, gone to the dark side, and he's working as an education consultant, pushing government-run school choice.
So it's a system that works against Mr. Smith going to Washington's. Basically, it's clandestine and it's stealth constructed to create purposeful barriers to entry to good guys and gals.
Yes, and if you slip by the barrier to entry, guess what? They are going to run your finances into the ground where you're eventually, if you start getting excited about being a politician, you're eventually going to go to the other side. And that's what I would say Josiah Magnuson has done. Look at what Josiah Magnuson said about school choice 4 years ago. Look what he's doing now. It is literally the opposite. I think Olga and I are the only idiots on the planet that have not changed anything we've said for 15 years. And I'm not changing. I'm going, well, I get it. Sarcastic. but, you know, this is, you know, when somebody's saying something one day and they're saying something different a couple weeks later or 6 months later, you need to start asking. And then when you ask and they get offended, that's when you know it's a real problem. If I change, I'm going to let you know. We used to battle, Presley especially used to have huge battles with William Timmons. Huge. I'm like, literally, you know, we posted Timmons one time years ago on a text to Presley, said, if you put this out, I will crucify you. So, of course, then we dressed Presley up on something like he's Jesus Christ, he's being crucified. I can't remember exactly what it looked like, but it was tasteful, but it was like, you're going to crucify him because he brings up what you're doing about something. And, you know, so we've had the huge battles with them. Now, who would have ever thought we would have supported Timmons versus a guy that we've had huge fights with versus a guy like Adam Morgan in the congressional race? You know, Adam Morgan says all the things we believe. He ain't doing them. He's not doing any of them. And that's what we got to teach people about. And it's and I think, you know, and I really like the way we put it in an article a couple of weeks ago. Don't trust any of them, and especially the ones you like. Makes sense? I mean, don't trust any of those politicians, but the ones you like, those are the ones you need to ask more questions about. Now, I'm saying give them some grace if they're proving themselves. I don't think you harass them about every single thing they do every single day. And I'm saying that for my own self-interest, because some people like to harass every decision I make. But I'm like, you know, if you know, there's a lot of things, think about it this way. There's a lot of things Trump does that we may not agree with. But I do think he's legit in what he's trying to do and the direction he's moving. He's having to cut deals. I think if he had an opportunity to press a button and say Lindsey Graham versus this person will be the senator from South Carolina, I don't think he's pressing the Lindsey Graham button. You know? But he had to endorse Lindsey Graham because of other things that are out there that we don't always know. Now, that I can excuse on that presidential global level. Yeah. I'm not excusing that for local people. I'm like, no, you need to fight it to the death every step of the way.
Yes,
And that's why
you can't get involved.
Yes.
Only 3 senators that are on the Republican side in the Senate. 2 of them we know are going to vote against Republicans almost all the time.
We'll see. It's going to be very interesting what happens with this big, beautiful bill. They got it through and there's obviously a lot of things in there we all don't agree on. But I don't know exactly. You know, there's a lot of things in there. From the discussions I've had with people, it will be a game changer on a lot of stuff. I mean, even my mother, who is obviously a conservative and Republican, all that kind of stuff. You know, she was like, yeah, people on Medicare or whatever, they should, or whatever the deal was, you know, some of these programs, they should have to work.
Yep.
They should have to contribute back something.
Well, it used to be years ago
Right.
that if you were on government assistance, you had to either work for the government somewhere as a volunteer for so many hours, or go out and get a job, and then your assistance was based on how much you brought in, and then they would adjust it. They wouldn't just cut you off. Well, in the early 70s, they just decided that if you're working, you don't get no help. They quit it.
But think about it. Think about it from
why you go to work? I can make more money on government assistance.
But think about it from a politician's perspective. Guess what? I just gave 10,000 people an ability to get money without having to do anything. I think they're going to vote for me.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I think they did it at the time.
Like Russ said, you can't beat Santa Claus.
No, I didn't know he said that, but that's a good one. Can't beat Santa Claus. You really can't. But they give this stuff away because they've now ingratiated themselves with a large group of people that will then vote for them. So, yeah. Who's got something to add or ask or questions, concerns?
I think one of the big things in that, they had to compromise on was salt, the state and local tax. You know how that affects South Carolina? I mean, I know it affects the big blue states. They have really super high taxes.
Yes.
So they up the ante as to how much they can deduct.
I don't remember exactly what the salt issue was. Did they just increase the standard deduction?
The upper limit is what your state deduction, what you can deduct.
Okay.
How much state and local taxes
Right.
you can deduct to try to save the Republican reps that are in New York.
Okay, so they're helping
I think they
now.
went from 10 to 30,000.
Yeah, 30,000.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, I don't know if she talked about it online, but I will the school choice that we support is in there. It's not this. There's a $10 billion program which is run by independent nonprofits, all that kind of stuff. We got Lindsey Graham to sponsor it on the Senate side. Couldn't get him to do anything past that. And obviously we got our people to support it on the House side. But S-292 and HR 833 is the $10 billion federal school choice program run by independent nonprofits. And all of our people support it, whatever. But most people thought it wasn't going to be in there, but they ended up putting it in there. It's $5 billion. They cut it from 10. They put the language in there. They cut it from 10 down to 5. Instead of corporate and individual donors, it's only individual donors, which I'm actually okay with. Because if you want more populist support for something, get more individuals donating as opposed to a big corporation. Coca-Cola gives you $1 million. It's whatever. If you get 20 or 1,000 individuals to give you, divided up, 1,000 apiece, then that's going to be more voters that are going to understand what school choice and understand what these programs are about. So they put that in there, and I can't wait to see if the Senate takes it out. It's $5 billion. It's nothing, relatively in the grand scheme of things, nothing for an absolute promise of school choice from Trump and all these people. It's like everything. And we're just kind of sitting back. Hopefully we'll know in a couple of weeks or a month by the end of June whether what's going to be in the Senate version and how it comes. But even the think about the fact that they had to negotiate on the House side to reduce it from 10 billion. They just added the bill in there to reduce it from 10 billion to 5 billion. I mean, they're increasing the debt ceiling $4 trillion.
Right.
I get it. I'm upset about it. It's not good.
It makes the teachers' unions look bad. It makes them look like lousy teachers.
Right.
Because,
but it's only $5 billion, and the Republicans could only, even though, and it's only for 4 years, right? So, and normally when you start a program, they the theory would be, it'd be hard to turn it off, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to put 20 billion over 4 years, as opposed to 40 billion, and they're increasing the debt limit $4 trillion. Mm-hmm. Just like, really? We had to do, where you got to save $20 billion somewhere, stick it to school choice.
I know I've said this before, but there's no child at grade level in Baltimore, as an example. The literacy rate is 33% for a public school, state educated child. That costs an average $17,000 a year. Homeschooling is $1,000 a year, and the literacy rate is 99%. It's not that it doesn't work; it's that it's going to frightfully embarrass the teachers unions, all this fat layers of superintendent everythingness. And Ben Carson's a perfect example. Single mom, she made him do a book report, one book report a week. It's not a big deal. You don't have to be Werner von Braun to homeschool, but they make it sound like such a hard thing. I know I've said this before, but I've talked to these many couples, and when Dad gets the job in Luxembourg, pick it, South Korea, Finland, Japan, anywhere. The kids are automatically brought back 2 to 3 years because they meet with the system in France, Finland, Japan, and say, oh, that's great. Well, Rufus and Griselda are actually 7th graders. They're not 10th graders in our nation. They don't meet the standards. So all public school taught children have to be typically set back 2 to 3 years in all other Western countries when they go any place. And it's not that this is hard. It's like the border wall. This is nothing. This is less than nothing. And it's just shameful that the teachers' unions, the bad teachers, not the good ones, but the crummy teachers in this nation hold the feet to the fire because they're so afraid, because they know they're going to look bad. They have no, the emperor has no clothes, or the empress.
Well, the problem, like you said, though, it's the union.
Right.
The unions have always protected the people who don't want to do anything. They've always kept people at work that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And it's the same in the education system. It doesn't matter where it is. If a union's involved, the union wants their money. So they can say,
Molly Spearman, we put out a video of her giving testimony, I think, on the Senate side one time. And it actually encouraged me. I'm like, because I've been, my jadedness is because I've been through this 1,000 times with these people. But Molly Spearman was the superintendent of education before Ellen Weaver. And Molly got up there and she talked about, we need to put the children first, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, holy cow, somebody finally gets it. It's like, last thing Molly was going to do was put the children first. It was about the teachers and the constituents, I was like, it's all talk. It's all, I hate to say it, it's all talk.
Right.
Most of us that are Gen Xers and baby boomers, they did not spend nowhere near as much money per child per year of school
Right.
that they do now. And the standards that they have now for the students that are these Gen whatevers that are coming out are so low that they don't even meet the standards of passing the 8th grade education level.
Right.
And they're graduating from high school. Now you got some, that are good students that are going to really that excel, but overall, the majority of the students do not meet the minimum standards to even pass an 8th grade reading level.
But what we have dealt with on the school choice we've been involved in here in South Carolina, it's been kids with special needs. The main group, I would say, dyslexia, which most entrepreneurs are dyslexic. And it's because I think they had to concentrate more to learn and figure things out as a youth. So they're used to like concentrating and figuring out the systems and all that type of stuff. So a lot of entrepreneurs are dyslexic. My mother was an educator before she got into administration and all that kind of stuff. But she talks about, from the old days, kids with dyslexia and how they just fell through the cracks. And she has one particular example she likes to talk about with us. And I'm like, how are you going to feel? And she's like, oh, well, people didn't really know that much about dyslexia back then. Like, okay, I get it. What if you ended up finding out that the system did know about dyslexia and the system didn't want to acknowledge it?
Wow.
Because the system didn't want to have to deal with the Americans with Disabilities Act and all that stuff and deal with the financial ramifications of having to help kids with dyslexia. So they just kept letting all those kids fall through the cracks. Because I will tell you, even when we were involved, doing a lot of stuff, the state did not acknowledge dyslexia as a learning disability. And this was, I would say, in 2015, 2016, they did not acknowledge it. With the program, the school choice program that was part of helping those kids with special needs, dyslexia being the biggest group, and then I think autism, and then some others. But the state started having to recognize it because it's a big group of kids. But I could almost, I don't know, and I don't have the evidence or had researched it, but I can almost tell you somebody, because people make those decisions in business. Ford Motor Company, I think it was Ford, one of them. This was one of the best case studies in the tort class in law school. They had made the headrest. We all know about the Pinto and it blows it. But they had made a headrest, and they calculated in the Pinto. They calculated the value. And maybe the headrest is a good example. But they made a headrest where it was a piece of metal that was like that. So you'd be in a wreck, and then you come back and impale yourself in this headrest. But that, I don't know if that had to do with the Pinto, but the business side on the Pinto is they made the business decision. Yes, X number of people are going to die. We're going to have to pay $1 million apiece. And, it's cheaper to do that than to fix the problem. I'm telling you, business people do it. They did it in the government stuff side too. I can almost guarantee there's somebody that said, we gotta, we're not gonna recognize dyslexia. I mean, my mother knew kids with dyslexia, a long time ago. I mean, math people, a lot of math people have dyslexia because they can't read, but they know numbers and they can add like nobody's tomorrow, so it's fantastic. And how many, the joke is always how many Einsteins did we lose because, we didn't do the right thing. So.
Probably the thing that getting local to Greenville County with the budget, and they wanted to shift some money to roads, and all of a sudden this big thing came up. Well, teachers aren't going to get raises. They're destroying the education system in Greenville County.
So again,
few of their bucks over to over the roads.
They're the same ones that are going out there saying that, but we have such a high graduation rate. And our test scores proving it. And like, no,
that was $8 million of an organization that has a $400-500 million a year budget. And they freaked out and what did they do? They started talking about, teachers aren't going to get their raises or teachers aren't going to get stuff, blah, 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 blah.
They also have $100 million reserve, and they have access in Columbia they can tap into.
Yes. So really, that $8 million was just a shot across the bow to see what heads would pop up, and they popped up. And I think they did some things that they, ethically weren't supposed to be doing because they were making political statements. And I need to. There's got to be a way to find it because they had some PR guy come out talking. I'm like, who is that PR guy? I want to know who that PR guy is, and I wonder how much he gets paid. How many people have been to a school board meeting here? Y'all been to a school board meeting? Oh, y'all haven't?
Yeah.
You ought to go to a school board meeting. They have the dais, big room like this, all much bigger than this, big like a building. All, there's 12 school board members. They all go across the top. And then there's some chairs, there's all these desks, and there's some desk over here. There's like 30 of them. I would say they're all employees and they're probably all making 6 figures plus, easy. And I'm like, I sit in there and I look around and I'm like, and one of them's a friend of mine from college. I'm like, who are these people?
Right.
And how is anybody in this freaking room helping a kid in a classroom? The problem is, and I say it, everybody knows it, but nobody's doing it. Nobody that has the authority can do it. It's going to sit there and say, become the jerk, the asshole. It's going to be pointed at as, Burke Royster does not want to be known as the biggest asshole in Greenville County because he cut a bunch of heads off and put money back into the classroom. He's not going to do it. We need people that are willing to do it. Who's willing to do it? Doge. But it's got to be us. It's got to be, do the analysis on that $8 million and figure out, all of the things that were exposed from that little, a tiny little,
Well, I think the most telling fact out of the whole thing is that how hard the teachers and the school board did not want Kurt to recite information off their own website.
Right.
That's the thing about socialism. They're so open about what they're doing, but no one is supposed to actually analyze it.
Right. Yeah, if you look at
It's crazy.
McGuffey,
We're learning. Go ahead.
if you look at McGuffey's readers, and John Quincy Adams, I think at age 14 was the ambassador to the Queen of the court of Catherine the Great, and he spoke at age 14 5 languages. How many 14-year-olds could you send and say, please, be the ambassador or the consul general, for that matter, to Finland, to Brazil? Name me one 14-year-old in the country. It's just the calamitous, catastrophic drop. It's so staggering. Dr. Laura Schlesinger said that in the 1950s, the average vocabulary of a teenager in the U.S. was 25,000 words. Now, and then a few years ago, it was 10,000. I don't know what it is now, But it's like, there's, what's his name, Tim or Jim, we were at that barbecue, and this guy was talking to his doctor about something, and there's kids at the doctor, and he's talking to the doctor, and he said, well, doctor, I demurred on that. And the doctor looks at him like, you're using words like from books. And I'm thinking, this is a doc.
Yes.
Well, they don't practice, they don't learn medicine anymore.
Some people actually think it's good we're losing words in the English language because you're right about
I
that.
can break something down on education that's very simple. And there's a big push for hands-on jobs now, right? Skilled labor. I ran a mill workshop for many years. I could not hire from Greenville County anybody 19 years old that went through that could read a tape measure and calculate fractions.
Wow.
I had to bring in people from Puerto Rico to do
Oh,
Oh, that's, if I may, did I cut you off, sir?
it. No, I made my point.
In my recruiting, and this is not, okay, in my recruiting, I've been a recruiter over 30 years, and so bless you, but like, I'll look at, I got many databases, I'll look at a pool of people, okay? And this is something, and most people don't know this, but let's say it's engineering, okay? So you got your freshly scrubbed EITFE or PE, whatever. Okay, so professional engineering, then 24, whatever. You got this pool of people here. You have nothing after that. Then you have a bunch of people 65 to 90, PE, PMP, MBA. But you know who's in the middle there? You know who's in the middle? I qualify for sponsorship. I have my H-1B. I have this visa. I am from this place. And you know what they'll have? They'll have 2 master's degrees, a PMP and an MBA, and salad dressing on top of that, because they're from a third or fourth world country and they want to butt out the Americans. And I tell you, I'll look, and there'll be 30 candidates, and 26 of the 30 will be double master's degrees, plus maybe an MBA or PMP or something like, maybe a JD thrown in, and they're from third world countries. And then you'll have like 2 or 3 of those 30 that will be like, well, I've got my PE, my professional engineer, and I graduated from Clemson. And that's great, but they're getting crowded out by other people who are shoving them aside. And I can tell you from recruiting, we've lost our manufacturing base at this time.
And then we're gonna have to build it back. It's but it's the education system.
Yeah.
In homeschools,
right.
I'm a huge supporter of homeschools. I mean, I am dumbfounded how smart homeschool kids are.
oh,
My-
they are.
I'm blown away.
They are.
My point was,
You're so smart.
everybody in this room, I'm sure, in elementary school learned fractions and how to read a tape measure.
Yeah.
I could not hire 20 years ago anybody that could do that for Greenville County.
Olga told her story about working. Her family in Poland, they had a market or food business and all that kind of stuff. Her father would not let her use a calculator. Made her literally think about and add up the measures
We were
and
allowed to
the.
have a pencil and a piece of paper.
That's smart. Oh, good.
He would
My
not
dad
let her
never
use a
been told.
calculator.
Good raising.
Carrie, you
I
had
was
something?
gonna say, if you wanna learn a new word on every page in the library,
What's
over
the
there, in the life
calculator?
section
Hold on.
is a book by a former
Yeah.
abortion doctor.
High school.
Hey, hold on.
No, I was gonna say, if you wanna learn a new word on every page, there's a book in the library over there in the pro-life section, written by a former abortion doctor, the one who started NARAL, which was the start of this whole mess.
Right.
Dr. Bernard Nathanson, he ended up converting and becoming pro-life and becoming a Christian. The book is Finger of God. He's very intelligent, and there's like a new word you've never heard before on every page of that book. At least if you're at my vocabulary level, which probably isn't very good.
I'm the numbers guy. I was not an English major. But I mean, as everybody knows, we have this, the library over here. Carrie's making a point of, what's the name of the book again?
Finger of God.
The Finger of God. Some really good stuff in there. We'll go ahead and close out, but I will say, doing the runoff elections this weekend in Poland for their president. It'll be for the next 5 years. We think the conservative is going to win. We put out on the
Really close.
but it's close, so we want everybody to go vote. If you
Bill.
in Poland, if our Polish friends go vote. Olga will be driving down to Atlanta to vote again
Thank you.
with another Polish girl from here in Greenville that she probably didn't vote last time. Are you sure she's going to vote the right way?
Oh, my
Yeah,
God. I don't think
Don't
it
give her right.
You haven't had that conversation, so
Well,
I don't
she
know.
knows how I'm our Facebook friends.
So she would know. She
She
assumed.
recently sent me some image about Trump supporting something in Poland. So I don't think she wants to be in the car with me if she's not going to vote the right way.
That's probably
And she
true.
asked
That's
me
probably
to
true.
go with me, so.
But I will point out that I ran it by, folks on the board and other folks just on the signal chat. We were actually going, and you see Christy Nome, they had CPAC in Poland this week. Christy Nome was endorsing.
Maureen Bannon, our friend Maureen Bannon was
Yeah,
there.
she was there.
Marco Soviet was there.
They had, it was like really a good, exciting time for
And
those
they were
guys.
hosting our candidate for president.
Right.
Oh.
In that particular, the conservative candidate actually met with Trump, I think, at the beginning of May. So I was like, you know what, why don't we, as the Greenville County
Don't
Republican,
say a word.
huh? What?
Okay?
I'm saying, why don't, I'm explaining what we did, but we didn't end up doing it and why. But I was like, why don't we just why don't we as a Greenville County Republican Party endorse the conservative candidate, because it is a global fight, right? So I'm thinking this will be a good thing. And as I did it, and I will tell you, I mean, if you want to talk about mechanics and all that, I actually had Grok write up the press release. I gave the basic information, and I'm like, holy cow, it's a really good press release. Unless endorsing, which we ended up not doing, because as we did more research, as she found, and Rock did not find this answer, is I said, is there a legal problem with the county party endorsing somebody in a foreign election? And it said, oh, we can't find anything anywhere, not a problem. Well, she researches it more because she's like, you're never paranoid about something. And if you're paranoid, we ought to look it up. She found in the Federal Election Commission that county parties were not, or even any American party is not supposed to be endorsing in a foreign election. So we did not do it. But I will personally endorse the what's his name. But it was funny. I can just imagine what the opposition would have done. And this is what we have. This is literally what we have to do. Jeff Davis would have probably been convicted of a felony. I'd be kicked out. Sled would be coming in. I'd be kicked out of the party. We'd be shut down because we endorsed in the foreign election interference. So we did not endorse. It's just so you know. So thanks. Have a great weekend. We'll see our Greenville people at the meeting on Monday. And if you got any questions, reach out and talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
I'm not getting any of the stuff I'm saying.